Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a story that completely flips how we view rejection, and we're looking at it through this wonderfully vibrant claymation-style visual journey. Look, rejection is something we all instinctively run from, right? It stings, it feels deeply personal, and honestly, it usually tells us to just stop whatever we're doing. But what if we've been looking at the word no completely backwards our entire lives?
Okay, let's really think about this fascinating question for a second. It's our hook for today because it directly challenges everything our brains are hardwired to feel about failure. I mean, we are taught to avoid failure at all costs, but the story we're breaking down today asks us to consider a pretty radical idea. What if extreme, repeated failure isn't the opposite of success, but literally the exact currency required to buy it?
Section 1. The Summer of 1985.
So we start our hero's journey with a 16-year-old kid named Tomas. Like a lot of teenagers, Tomas needed a job in the summer of 1985, but this wasn't for the usual reasons like buying fancy clothes or saving up for a car. His father had just delivered a very firm ultimatum one morning. If you want spending money, you've got to earn it. So picture this wonderfully chaotic newsroom called the County Journal, where that single push sent him. This wasn't some glamorous corporate office. We're talking worn-out carpets, desks absolutely buried under mountains of paper, and the constant, rhythmic clacking of typewriters. Rotary phones rang absolutely nonstop, and that heavy, permanent smell of fresh newspaper ink just hung in the air. When the publisher asked a nervous Tomas if he was afraid of talking to strangers, Tomas hesitantly said he didn't think so. The publisher just smiled and said, "Well, we'll find out."
The very next morning, Tomas was handed his entire toolkit. It was incredibly simple, but honestly, utterly terrifying. He got a tiny wooden desk, a telephone, a chunky yellow legal pad, and a thick stack of local business listings. Roofers, plumbers, electricians, landscapers, basically businesses that were already advertising, just not in his newspaper. His job was to cold call them, introduce himself, and ask them to buy an ad. Simple on paper, right? But incredibly daunting in practice.
Part 2. 37 Rejections.
Notice the sheer velocity of the rejection here. Just imagine a bright, heavy rotary phone being aggressively slammed down over and over again. Thomas's very first call lasted exactly 22 seconds. No thanks, and a click. The second call? We're happy where we advertise, click. It was just a brutal, rapid-fire sequence of hang-ups from people who wanted absolutely nothing to do with him.
By lunchtime, and remember, this is just halfway through his very first day, Tomas had collected a massive, soul-crushing 37 definitive no's. He was completely defeated. He just sat there staring at his legal pad, totally convinced he wasn't cut out for sales. He figured everyone else was naturally better at this whole thing, and he was absolutely ready to pack up his desk and just never come back.
Section 3. The Mentor's Secret.
Right as Tomas is emotionally wiped out and packing up his things, we hit a crucial turning point. Frank, the oldest salesman in the office, a guy who had been selling ads longer than Tomas had even been alive, steps in. Frank notices the kid's misery, walks over, grabs Tomas's yellow legal pad, and draws 2 columns. Under yes, Tomas had big, fat 0. Under no, he had 37. When Tomas admits he got 0 yeses out of 37 tries, Frank simply leans back and says, "Good. Tomorrow I want 40. Now, Tomas is entirely confused. I mean, why on earth would anyone want 40 rejections? And Frank just laughs, explaining that Tomas is counting the completely wrong thing.
Frank flipped that legal pad over and wrote down a profound mathematical and psychological truth. Every yes is hiding behind a pile of no's. Think about the great Michael Jordan for a second. He's widely considered the greatest basketball player of all time, right? But it's not because he never missed. Actually, it's because he missed more baskets than almost anyone else in the history of the sport. Frank explained to Tomas that you cannot control who buys from you. The only variable you have any actual control over is how many people you ask. Most people quit the exact moment they hear no, but the winners, they just keep walking down the road until they reach the yes that's been waiting for them all along.
Section 4. Becoming a collector.
That single sentence on the back of the legal pad sparked a massive behavioral change. That night, Tomas literally couldn't stop thinking about Frank's words. So, the very next morning, his new strategy came down to 3 clear steps. First, Tomas made a promise to himself to completely stop trying to collect yeses. Second, he decided to become the greatest collector of no's the newspaper had ever seen, celebrating every single rejection with a tiny checkmark. And third, he reframed the word entirely. No didn't mean failure anymore, it just meant he was one step closer. Because Tomas completely stripped the fear of rejection out of his workflow, his productivity just exploded. While other salespeople were busy celebrating their rare sales, Tomas would whisper, "Another no," with his huge grin on his face. People actually laughed at him. They told him he'd never make any real money. But because he wasn't afraid of the phone anymore, he happily called businesses that everyone else skipped. Before lunch, while most salesmen made about 20 calls, Tomas was comfortably hitting 80. 5 rejections in a row made the other guys quit, but for Tomas, it just meant he was speeding toward his next yes.
And get this, within just a single year, this fearless tally system propelled this 16-year-old kid to lead the entire office. Not because he had to smooth his voice or some magical sales pitch, but purely because he asked more people than anyone else. As the years passed, the newspaper grew and Tomas eventually left to start his own companies. And you know what? He applied this exact same courage to collect no's when he was looking for clients, securing investors, and building partnerships for his own ventures.
Eventually, business after business succeeded. People started calling Tomas an overnight success. They saw the nice house, they admired his successful companies, and they really envied his freedom. But calling him an overnight success was a total illusion. What society didn't see, and honestly what nobody ever sees, were the thousands and thousands of unseen no's that Tomas had enthusiastically collected to build that life.
Section 5. Passing the torch.
Finally, our narrative comes full circle. Years later, an adult Tomas decides to return and visit that same old ink-smelling newspaper office. Walking into the county journal, almost nothing had changed. Same worn carpet, same ringing phones. But sitting at Tomas's exact old wooden desk was a brand new 16-year-old kid. And this kid looked just as absolutely miserable as Tomas did back in 1985. The boy admitted he wasn't any good at the job, confessing he had just received 28 no's that day. Tomas just smiled at him and replied, "Only 28.
Knowing exactly what needed to be done, Tomas picked up a yellow legal pad, wrote the word no right at the top, and passed down the wisdom he had received. He told the boy, "Don't count your sales, count your courage." When the boy protested that he really just wanted yeses, Tomas validated that feeling but shared the ultimate secret. Successful people aren't the ones who hear the fewest no's. They are simply the ones who figure out how to become friends with no.
Before he left the office for good, Tomas wrote this final, powerful message on the bottom of the kid's legal pad, a page that the boy kept for the rest of his life. Every time someone says no, smile. Most people just stopped walking. You took one more step toward the yes they'll never reach. It is such a brilliant reframing of rejection, turning it from a roadblock into a simple stepping stone.
Which leaves us with a final provocative question to challenge how you approach your own daunting goals. Whether you're learning a new skill, starting a business, or just trying to put your authentic ideas out into the world, the math remains exactly the same. Your success is waiting for you, hidden just behind a giant pile of rejections. So, I'll leave you to think about this. How many no's are you willing to collect today?